Andy Gibb once said that he was more aware than he had ever been in his life of what he had, and that he did not want to lose it again. Those words carried a quiet sadness, because they came from someone who had already seen how quickly everything could disappear. At one point, people around him were cheering, praising his talent, and telling him he had an incredible future ahead. Yet behind the applause and bright lights, Andy's life was far more complicated than most people ever realized. Andy Gibb made history in music at a very young age. He became the first solo artist whose first 3 singles all reached #1 on the charts. He dated famous actresses, co-hosted popular television shows, and seemed to live a life that many could only dream about. But by the age of 30, Andy was gone. When he died, many blamed drugs or heartbreak. Rumors spread quickly, and some even whispered about suicide. Through all of this, Andy's daughter, Peta, stayed silent for almost 40 years. She watched people speculate about her father's life and death, but she did not speak publicly. Finally, in 2024, she decided to break that silence. What she shared about Andy's final years surprised even those who thought they knew him well. It revealed a story that had been hidden for decades. Andy Gibb was born on March 5, 1958, in a quiet hospital in Manchester, England. From the very beginning, music was part of his world. His father had once been a drummer and a big band leader, and music filled the home naturally. His mother brought warmth and love shaped by her Irish and English roots. Andy was the youngest of 5 children. His 3 older brothers, Barry, Robin, and Maurice, were already growing close in a way that would later turn them into the Bee Gees. Andy entered a family where music was not just a hobby but a way of life. When Andy was only 6 months old, the family made a major move. In September 1958, they boarded a ship called the Fair Sea and traveled to Australia under an assisted migration program. They were chasing opportunity and a better future. The family first settled in Redcliffe, then moved to Crib Island in January 1960. Andy was still a baby, but this pattern of moving would define much of his childhood. The family continued to shift between Brisbane and Sydney, and with each move, Andy had to adjust to a new place and new surroundings. Even though life was unsettled, music was always close. Andy's brothers were already appearing on television and recording songs. He grew up watching them perform, listening closely, and absorbing everything without fully understanding how much it would shape him later. When Andy turned 8 in January 1967, the family returned to England. This move felt very different. By then, his brothers were becoming international stars. Fans gathered outside their London home, waiting to see them. Andy suddenly found himself living in a world filled with noise, excitement, and pressure. School in England was not easy for Andy. Some classmates assumed his life was perfect because of his brother's fame. They did not see the pressure he felt or the loneliness that came from always being compared to them. Andy struggled quietly, carrying feelings he did not know how to express. His early years in Australia had been filled with frequent moves, outdoor play, and a sense of freedom. Those memories stayed with him, especially as life became more intense in England. Between June and August 1961, the family lived at a house on Nudgee Road in Northgate, Australia, and Andy attended Northgate School. After that, they moved again, this time to Surfers Paradise, and later to Sydney. Every move meant new schools and new faces. Andy often felt like he was starting over while his brothers were building their careers on television. He spent a lot of time watching them succeed, wondering where he fit into all of it. When the family returned to England in 1967, Andy was still very young, but the world around him was already spinning fast. His brothers were stepping into global fame, and Andy felt left behind in some ways. He had not gone through the same intense musical training they had experienced. Fame surrounded him, but it did not belong to him yet. This made him feel both close to success and very far from it at the same time. At just 8 years old, Andy lived with crowds outside his home almost every day. The excitement around the Bee Gees made it hard for him to find his own identity. Some people suggested he should join his brothers, but those ideas were dismissed because he was too young and inexperienced. There was also a big age gap between Andy and his brothers. Barry was more than 11 years older, and Robin and Maurice were over 8 years older. That distance made Andy feel even more separated from them. School brought more challenges. Some classmates treated him differently because of his brother's success, and the teasing hurt deeply. Andy tried to find comfort in something familiar. When he was 13, Barry gave him a guitar. That gift came at exactly the right time. Andy held onto it as if it were a lifeline. He practiced late into the night, not trying to copy his brothers, but trying to find his own voice. The guitar helped him feel grounded and gave him hope that he could one day stand on his own. That guitar stayed with him when he left England for Ibiza in the early 1970s. In 1972, when Andy was just 14 years old, he started performing in tourist clubs. The nights were loud, the crowds unpredictable, and the work demanding. But those clubs gave him something valuable. He could make mistakes, learn, and grow without the heavy weight of his family name. He played popular songs, early originals, and anything the audience wanted to hear. Long nights taught him how to hold attention and connect with people. By the end of 1973, Andy had built a small following and gained a clearer idea of who he wanted to be. His time in Ibiza helped him believe that he did not need to rely on his brother's success. He could create his own path. In 1974, at age 15, Andy made another fresh start and moved to Sydney to live with his sister Leslie. From the moment he arrived, he felt a sense of peace. He later described Sydney as his spiritual home, a place filled with warmth, freedom, and possibility. Andy lived simply in Sydney, sharing small apartments and spending his days writing songs and performing in local clubs. The city allowed him to breathe and grow. The Australian music scene was energetic and welcoming, and Andy felt like he belonged. For the first time, he was not just the youngest Gibb. He was simply Andy, a young artist finding his way. His talent did not go unnoticed. Cole Joy, an early Australian rock and roll pioneer, saw Andy's potential and began mentoring him. From 1974 to 1976, Andy performed throughout Sydney with his first band, Melody Fair. The group played in hotels and clubs, facing long nights and demanding crowds. In November 1974, Andy recorded 6 demo songs with Cole Joy. These recordings showed early signs of his unique identity as an artist. Even while the Bee Gees were dominating international charts, Andy stayed focused on small venues and modest pay. At 16, he released his first commercial single, Words and Music, in late 1975. It was not a major hit, but it proved that Andy could write and create music on his own. The song gave him confidence and marked the start of something new. In June 1976, everything changed when Barry called and encouraged Andy to move to Miami. Andy was only 18, but he did not hesitate for long. On July 11, 1976, he married Kim Rear in Sydney. Soon after, they traveled to Bermuda, where Andy began working on his debut album. By September 1976, Andy and Kim arrived in Miami, stepping into a world filled with creativity and pressure. Andy recorded his album Flowing Rivers at Criteria Studios, where major artists were working at the same time. He poured himself into the sessions, recording songs he had written in Australia. When the album was released in September 1977, it became a huge success. It reached the top 20 on the Billboard 200 and sold over 1 million copies. His first single, I Just Want to Be Your Everything, hit number 1, followed by Love is Thicker Than Water. Andy's rise was fast and historic. By 20 years old, he had achieved something no solo artist had done before. Fame surrounded him, and his face appeared everywhere. But behind the success, his personal life was falling apart. Andy and Kim divorced just days before their daughter Peta was born. Drug use, especially cocaine, created distance and paranoia. Kim returned to Australia, and Andy's relationship with his daughter became strained. As Andy's career continued to soar, the pressure only grew heavier. He was expected to always smile, perform, and live up to an image carefully shaped by others. Inside, he struggled to keep balance. The fame that once felt like a dream slowly became a burden. Andy Gibb's story is not just about success and tragedy. It is about a young man searching for belonging, identity, and peace in a world that moved too fast. His daughter's decision to finally speak out reminds us that behind every public figure is a deeply human story, filled with love, pain, hope, and unanswered questions. Producer Albie Galutin said from the very beginning that the relationship between Andy Gibb and Marie Osmond seemed almost impossible. Andy was already deep into drug use, while Marie did not even drink soda. They lived in completely different worlds. Marie came from a strict, protective family that valued discipline and stability, and Andy was spiraling into chaos. Her family did not approve of the relationship, and things grew worse as Andy's behavior became more intense. He started calling Marie late at night, over and over again, unable to stop himself. What began as love quickly turned into obsession. The calls became so frequent and troubling that Marie's family eventually stepped in and took legal action to stop him from contacting her. Years later, Marie admitted that she regretted the way she ended things. She told Andy over the phone that they were finished, and that single moment hit him like a wall he could not climb. For Marie, the relationship was slowly slipping away. For Andy, it became another deep wound he did not know how to heal. She later explained that she was afraid of losing herself if she kept trying to save him. Even decades later, she still spoke of Andy with sadness and respect, remembering him as someone who was gentle at heart but deeply broken. Not long after that chapter closed, another relationship entered Andy's life, one that would place him directly under the Hollywood spotlight. In 1981, Andy met Victoria Principal on The John Davidson Show. Victoria was 31 years old and already a major television star because of her role on Dallas. Andy was only 23, still charming, still smiling in a way that lit up rooms. Together, they looked perfect. Magazines loved them, cameras followed them, and for about 13 months they were one of Hollywood's most admired couples. But behind the beautiful photos and public appearances, Andy's addiction was getting worse. Victoria tried to hold on for as long as she could. She cared deeply for him, but she wanted him to choose sobriety. Eventually, she gave him an ultimatum. It was her or the drugs. Andy could not let go of the drugs. That choice broke them both. Victoria later said that no matter how much she loved him, she could not give up her own life trying to save someone who would not save himself. During this difficult period, Andy and Victoria recorded a duet together, All I Have to Do Is Dream. It became Andy's final single. The song reached number 51 on the charts. That number stayed with him. It felt like a symbol of how far he had fallen from the top. The heartbreak from the relationship stayed with him too. By the time Andy finished recording his third album, After Dark, in 1980, the struggle was already clear to those around him. Producers noticed the changes. His focus was slipping, his energy was uneven, and his addiction was pulling him down fast. The album did not come close to matching the success of his earlier work. On its own, that might have been manageable, but addiction began to cost him much more than chart positions. Opportunities started slipping away. Roles he was considered for, including parts in The Pirates of Penzance and Joseph and the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, were lost. He was removed from hosting duties on Solid Gold. These losses came one after another, and the ultimatum from Victoria landed right in the middle of the storm. The album's weak performance felt like another door closing. Each closed door pushed Andy further inward. When the relationship with Victoria ended in March 1982, just days before his 24th birthday, something inside him collapsed. She told him she did not want to marry him, even though he had hoped for a future together. When he failed to choose sobriety, she walked away for good. Andy never truly recovered from that moment. In later interviews, he blamed her for his downfall, convinced that the breakup had broken something inside him forever. From that point on, his decline became impossible to ignore. After the breakup, Andy's life spiraled out of control. He told People magazine that he completely fell apart and stopped caring about anything. Cocaine became his constant companion. He used it around the clock and spent about $1,000 a day on it, an amount that would equal several $1,000s today. The drug took over every part of his life. He stayed awake for 2 straight weeks at a time and refused to leave his room. Messages from producers and managers piled up, but he ignored them. His hospital visits became more frequent as he suffered from severe chest and stomach pains. People in the music and television industry began whispering about his condition. Soon, no one could hide how far he was falling. Emotionally, he was just as broken. He skipped major appearances, including the American Music Awards, because he could not bring himself to walk out the door. His absences became a pattern. He missed rehearsals and performances for Joseph and the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and eventually he was fired. Solid Gold let him go for the same reason. Broadway producer Zev Buffman later said Andy was wonderful when he actually showed up, but the problem was that he rarely did. His talent was still there, but his addiction had taken away every bit of stability he had left. Andy joined Solid Gold in 1981 believing it would be the fresh start he needed. The show was popular, and audiences still remembered him as the young star with the golden voice. For a short time, it felt like he might rise again. But as the months passed, his addiction kept pulling him away. By the spring of 1982, he had missed too many tapings. Each absence tested the patience of the producers who kept hoping he would show up. Andy later admitted that he was using a lot of cocaine and that he simply did not care about responsibilities anymore. Fans waited, coworkers covered for him, but eventually the decision was made. He was fired. That moment became the first major public crack in the image he had worked so hard to build, and it damaged his career for years. Soon after, he tried to recover by taking on a major Broadway role in Joseph and the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat in 1982. It was a huge opportunity and one that could have changed everything. For a brief time, people believed it might work. But the same pattern followed him. Within 6 weeks, he missed 12 performances. His understudy appeared so often that the producers had no choice but to confront him. Andy begged them not to fire him and promised to fix everything. Then he missed another show. That was the final straw. He was let go, and another chance slipped through his hands. His family watched helplessly as he continued to fall, even though he understood what was happening and could not stop himself. The struggle did not end there. Andy moved on to a Los Angeles production of The Pirates of Penzance, hoping things would be different. But the same issues followed him into rehearsals. Missed performances continued, and when the show went on tour, Andy was left behind. Producers said his attendance made it impossible to rely on him. This became the third major project lost to the same problem. Industry insiders began to whisper that he could not be trusted anymore. His family felt the pain behind those whispers. They tried to help him, but they also saw how trapped he was inside his addiction. As his career faded, something even more painful happened. His voice, the very thing that had made him famous, began to break down. Years of drug use damaged his vocal cords. His once smooth and powerful tone became uneven and tired. People close to him noticed the change. His brothers Barry, Robin, and Maurice tried to reach him, but the strain between them grew. They loved him deeply, but every relapse, every missed call, and every broken promise added more weight to their hearts. Marie Osmond later revealed that she took legal action to stop the Bee Gees from helping Andy financially because she believed they were unknowingly enabling his addiction. It showed how complicated and painful the situation had become, with everyone trying to help in different ways while watching him slip further away. By 1985, Andy's family pushed him to seek treatment at the Betty Ford Clinic, one of the most respected addiction centers in the country. He stayed there for 6 weeks, surrounded by therapy and structure. For a moment, there was hope. He walked out believing he might finally start over. But addiction did not loosen its grip. He relapsed again, pulled back by depression and deep self-hatred that he never fully understood. His family felt crushed because they knew how much he needed that victory. At the same time, his finances were collapsing. In the late 1970s, Andy had earned millions of dollars. He was making tens of thousands per show and had earned millions from shadow dancing alone. But cocaine burned through his money as fast as it destroyed his health. By 1985, his income had dropped sharply. By 1986, it was even worse. Bills piled up, opportunities disappeared, and in September 1987, Andy filed for bankruptcy. The details were shocking. His debts were massive, while his assets were almost nothing. He was allowed to keep only a small amount of personal property. He lived rent-free in a Florida penthouse, using furniture borrowed from his brothers. Fame had become a distant memory, and the fall left him exposed and fragile. His daughter received no financial security from the man who had once ruled the charts. As the years closed in, Andy made one last attempt at a comeback. In January 1988, he traveled to England because Island Records was willing to give him another chance. Barry helped arrange the opportunity. All Andy had to do was show up and sign the contract. But anxiety overwhelmed him. He missed meetings and began to believe he had nothing left to offer. The contract was never signed, and the album never began. He did record a few sessions later that spring, but fear and addiction were stronger than his plans. Barry and Maurice tried to support him through phone calls, urging him to stay clean. Each missed opportunity felt heavier, because everyone knew this might be his last chance. Despite everything, Andy still dreamed quietly. In 1987, he earned a pilot's license, something very few people knew about at the time. It showed that he still imagined a future beyond music. He talked to friends about flying and even about possibly working with the Bee Gees again. Barry later said that Andy had a quiet determination that people rarely saw. That license became a small but powerful symbol of hope, proof that he had not completely given up. Everything came to an end in March 1988. After his 30th birthday on March 5, Andy began feeling worse. He had checked himself into a hospital weeks earlier but left too soon. On March 7, he went to John Radcliffe Hospital in Oxford with severe chest pains. Doctors wanted to run more tests, but before they could, Andy collapsed on March 10 and never recovered. The cause was myocarditis, an inflamed heart muscle weakened by years of substance abuse. His doctor explained that his heart simply could not fight anymore. Andy had been sober for over a year, but the damage was already done. The world was shocked. Many fans did not know how serious his condition had been. His family felt the loss deeply because they believed he was close to turning a corner. Just 5 days after turning 30, Andy Gibb was gone. He left behind one daughter, Peta, who was only 10 years old. Because he left no will, she inherited nothing. For most of her childhood, she knew her father only through short visits and distant phone calls. Rumors spread that Andy had taken his own life, but they were not true. In 2024, Peta finally spoke publicly. She said her father did not die from heart disease alone. She said he died because he hated himself. Her words changed how people understood his story, revealing the deep pain behind the fame. In January 2024, she launched the official Andy Gibb website, filled with photos and memories never seen before. For the first time, she took control of his story, and the world finally saw Andy Gibb not just as a tragic star, but as a man who loved deeply, dreamed constantly, and struggled quietly.